Hi, David.
Hey, Mark.
How you doing?
I'm fine. I'm breathing in a different way to the way I was breathing 24 hours ago, which is a very strange thing to say.
Most things you say are strange, so just to give you a bit of context as to where we are, it is December the 11th, 2023 today. We're about 2 months on from the terrible events of October the 7th. Israel has been at war for 2 months. David and I have been working non-stop for the last 2 months within our jobs that have some relationship to what's going on. We've decided that now is the time to start recording again.
We have absolutely no idea as we're recording this when you will be listening to this. At some point, the Jerusalem Post executives will decide we're not only going to be publishing about the war, but that we will be publishing other things as well. But Mark and I have to build up inventory, we have to build up products, we have to build up our trips so that we have what to share with you. So we took the decision to travel at this time, and we've come to Poland, and right now we're in Krakow.
We are staying at the lovely Saski Hotel, part of the Hilton Curio collection, and we're currently sat in a lovely Italian restaurant around the corner from the hotel called Boccanera.
We arrived on our flight from Tel Aviv with Sundor, which is a sub-company of El Al, about 2 hours ago. Our guide, whom you may hear from a little bit later on, has joined us, and in the next few minutes we're going to be heading out into the Jewish quarter of this city. Mark, you've been here before.
I have. I came 2 years ago during the outbreak of Omicron, so most of my time was spent trying to find a COVID test, visiting lots of closed shops, lots of closed museums, not really getting the best of Krakow. Ordinarily, when David and I come abroad, we try and have a lot of fun. We joke, we giggle, we mess around, we act like school children, and we try and bring that sort of fun across. With everything that's going on at the moment in Israel, I hope you'll understand that we will try and be a little bit more grown up on this podcast. We will try and bring you some of the beautiful cultural aspects of the city, some of the Jewish aspects of the city.
We're not going to go in the direction of a quiz question on this occasion, but instead what we will do is bring forward what we normally do at the end of the podcast, and that is to ask you to help us to make this podcast even better.
We've obviously been away for a couple of months. You've got out the habit of listening to our podcast. We have had a couple of special podcasts about the war, and I recommend you listen to that to give some context about how the war has affected travel into Israel and travel out of Israel. But as David said, it's important that you subscribe to our podcast, you rate us, you give us 5 stars, and you send us some feedback on our social media.
If you do want to be in touch with us, there are 2 ways to do that: through our social media at MarkDavidPod, or via our Gmail, markdavidpod@gmail.com.
My name is Janusz Markuch, and I'm a founder and director of a Jewish culture festival in Krakow, which actually became the Israeli Jewish Culture Festival in Krakow, which I have been organized from 36 years.
We're sitting in a really pleasant cafe, light jazz music in the background. I'm looking at the counter and there's Hebrew lettering there, there's Jewish posters everywhere, and the place is called Cheder. What is this place and why are we here?
When I discovered this place, I didn't know what it was over here before the Second World War. When we renovated this place, I was wondering how should I call it, and the inspiration for this place is this picture, which I hang on the wall, picture taken by one of the greatest Jewish photographer, Alfred Kaczyzny, in 1926 in Lublin in Cheder. So I thought myself, I've been thought about it many, many years, that I need a space when I would be able, between the editions of a Jewish Culture Festival, provide the basic knowledge about the religious but also secular Jewish culture. So I was hesitating because I really like this name Heder, because instead that this is the religious school for boys, it's also in Hebrew means the room, the space of our social meetings. And then just a few days after we opened it, I found in the archives that this room, this Heder, before the Second World War, was a Beit HaMidrash, which belonged to the Chevra Ner Tamid. And even this finjan, which I put on the center of a table, it is finjans which are brought from Yerushalayim, from Jerusalem. Everything which we want and which we serve over here, beginning from the program of a Jewish Culture Festival and finish on the, let's say coffee, everything is authentic. We are not playing with the past, we are not playing with the people. We're trying to give them something which is located on the highest artistic and intellectual level. Why? Because we were inspired on the one hand by the 1,000 years of a history and culture created by the Polish Jews who lived in this place, on my soul. And on the other hand, I am inspired by the Israel, which for me is a center of the Jewish life and a center of the Jewish culture. And by the way, the most important day and date, in my opinion, in whole Jewish history is in 1948. So even the Krakow, when we are sitting right now, is located less than 60 kilometers from Auschwitz-Birkenau. So we've never forgotten what happened over here, but paying attention and paying homage to the people who lived here and who were murdered on my land, we are focused on the life. We are lighting the candle of light.
Let's look at the festival. You created it in 1988. That's a time when things were very different in Poland. There were some Holocaust survivors here. All of you, Jewish, Catholic and others, were living under the regime of the communists. How did you piece all that together and manage to weave your way into creating this festival, which is still going today in 2023-24?
אני לא יודע. I don't know. I was 28 years old guy, and the only thought, the only feeling that time I had in my head and in my heart was to do it. I've never thought about the future. I just wanted to organize the first edition. I just wanted to share not only my fascination with the Jewish culture, but my love with the Jewish culture. I was right. Because in 1988, yes, still under the communist regime, I gathered more than 100 people. 100 people, among these people were the Jewish guys with a kippah, with a yarmulkes on his head, which was a clear sign that we are Jews, we are not afraid to be Jewish, and we are proud to be Jewish in this land, just 20 years after the communist regime kicked out all Polish citizens because they were Jews in 1968. What is the background? Because, as you mentioned, 1,000 years, Polish and Jewish and Polish culture, especially after Haskalah, of course, intertwined. And you cannot imagine so-called Polish culture, you cannot imagine so-called European culture without the Jewish contribution. And people don't want to remember that, don't want to know that. But I know one other guy who is like a shamus. I'm knocking to their doors and I try to wake them up to remember. So on the one hand, we remember what happened, absolutely. We will never forget what happened here. I'm talking about the life and I'm talking about the death, but, and this is most important, significant thing, the legacy left us by Germans is a death. But legacy left us by Jews is a life. I chosen life. That's what I'm staying together with Israel right now. culture which we treat as with something very, at least me, very, very important is our common culture. The Jewish Culture Festival is done by the guy like me and, non-Jewish guys who work with me. But the real participants, real creators of a Jewish Culture Festival in Krakow are mostly artists, scholars from Israel and from the biggest diaspora in the world, mostly New York area.
I assume a culture festival in Krakow with Jewish culture, there's a lot of klezmer.
Yes and no. So I love klezmer music, and I know how the real klezmer music sounds like, but there are only few, in my opinion, I want to underline it, it's my private opinion, that there is only few really great authentic bands in the world which play the real authentic klezmer music, and they are always in Krakow. But since I came first time to Jerusalem, to Israel, to Eretz in 1991, with my prejudice, so-called prejudice that, Jewish culture is a culture created by the, Ashkenazic people in Poland. Suddenly, I opened the door to Jerusalem, I opened the door to Israel, and I saw the people who came to Israel in 1948 from more than 100 countries, and all of them schlepped, this heritage of the countries, not only from Europe, but from Mizrahi countries. And I heard, instead of the klezmer music, I heard in the radio the music which was very similar to the Arabic music. So then I understood that this is a whole picture of the entire Jewish world, and I invited in 1992 Haberacha Tivit, and also to create the balance, one of my favorite, my beloved Chava Alberstein, who came and sang in Yiddish and Ivrit, of course. And step by step, festival by festival, I invited more and more and more Mizrahi artists from Israel, which reflects what's going on in Israel nowadays. Because the festival is a living Jewish culture festival. You want to experience the real authentic music? If you want to experience the real authentic culture, please come to Krakow. This year on Szeroka Street, which was called by one of the journalists Jewish Woodstock, where we organize a huge open-door concert which lasts from 6 p.m. till 1:30 in the morning, 7.5 hours non-stop Jewish music, done in the middle of Europe, the only place where we can do it. Can you imagine this kind of a concert, open-door concert in Paris? Are you kidding me? In England? In Belgium? Whatever? No. Only in this so-called anti-Semitic Poland, which became, again, the house for also Israeli people who escaped because of the war. So we have 15,000 people, and suddenly on the stage, we see the beautiful, beautiful woman, Liraz, who invited on the stage 3 women from Iran, and 2 of them had a covered faces because they still live in Tehran. The prize for attending the Jewish Culture Festival in Krakow is also life and death, both. But we are not afraid. As Rabbi Nachman from Bratslav used to say, and we used to sing, Kol haolam kulo, gesher tsar meot, gesher tsar meot, gesher tsar meot, Kol haolam kulo, gesher tsar meot, gesher tsar meot, etc. So we are never afraid. Never, never.
There are Jewish people around the world who try to run festivals, but the passion that you as a non-Jew have put into this for the vast majority of your life, you must be crazy, you must be Meshuggah. Thank you so much for being as crazy as you are.
Oh, I tell you something, Baruch Hashem, I am a Meshuggah. Of course, absolutely, I agree. And I think that this is one of the way how we can not change the world. No, forget it. All of this with whole respect. Tikkun Olam is a good for the people who want to, send a message to the people who are deaf. No. Start from yourself. Be honest with yourself. This is the only way how you should be and must be honest with the world. Let's do like what I have done with my family. The festival is a family. We created some kind of a Jewish, Israeli, Polish family. And this is the most important achievement, nothing else.
Good evening. My name is Jolanta. I'm a guide in Krakow, also in the Jewish quarter, and now we are really on the Broad Street, Szeroka Street, which is the heart of the Jewish quarter for centuries, because even from 12th century, we can say, yeah. And it's a really very lovely, beautiful place. It's a nice evening, yes, so today. And really, we can feel the climate of the former Jewish quarter if you look around, if you look at the old houses, at synagogues, like Old Synagogue, which is the oldest old synagogue in the city, and one of the oldest in Poland, of course. And the second one called Rama Synagogue. Yes, so it was built by very rich merchant, yes, so Moses Isserles in the 16th century to his son, who was the famous rabbi called Rama Remu, you know, yeah. Yes, so all Jews respected him because he was very talented. He finished the yeshiva school in Lublin when he was only 18 years old, yeah, and he became the rabbi of the Krakow Jewish community, and until to his death, yeah, so because he died in the same year like one of the Polish kings, Zygmunt August, yeah, in 1572, yeah. So the Rama Synagogue, because we called it like that, it is still in use. Just one still used by Jewish community of religious Jews, of course. But in former times it was only used by the Rabbi Rama, his family and friends, yeah. But it is still possible to see the place in which Rabbi Rama used to sit down, you know, and to explain, to pray, of course, yeah. And there is also a cemetery, yes, so adjoining synagogue. There is the oldest Jewish cemetery preserved, yeah, from the 16th century.
Rabbi Moshe Isserles is buried in the cemetery?
Yes, of course, he is. It is, you know, just buried behind, yes, so the synagogue. It's easy to recognize his grave because it's a very beautiful gravestone, very beautiful sculptured. He was buried under the tree, you know, right? It is also easy to find it. And of course, his wife, the family was buried there, yeah. The cemetery was a little bit destroyed, demolished by Germans at the time of the Second World War, but fortunately it was possible to reconstruct, you know, some matzevas. It shows also, you know, the old Polish Jewish history, yeah, we can say, yeah. It's really worth to see.
Mark, one of the things that Yola's been telling us is that, with perhaps the exception of the cemetery and a couple of other places, this area of Kazimierz and indeed the rest of Krakow, they were originally two separate cities but are now joined, are largely untouched because the Germans decided to make this their regional capital. You're the expert at describing things. Describe where we are right now.
Poland.
Thank you very much indeed. At the start of this you said no humour, so I see you stuck to that.
You can cut that out. We're in a square and it feels ever so Jewish. It's the fifth night of Hanukkah, and behind us is a large Hanukkah with lights lit, centre of the square, everyone can see it. And as you work your way around the square, you see a number of restaurants, a number of Israeli Jewish style restaurants. There's one called Sababa, there's one called Aviv. Behind me is a hotel called the Hotel Rubenstein, which I believe Yola told us is 2 doors up from where the famous cosmetician Helena Rubinstein was born. Behind me is the altar, the old synagogue. This feels so Jewish.
Apart from the Christmas lights, which are also here, I think perhaps that's a beautiful part of the town, and we're very lucky that we're here at this time of year, but is this blend of the Jewish history and, of course, the Christian culture as well?
It is like, you know, something common between the Jewish and, you know, Christians, yes, so we can say. The Jews were always the part of the Polish culture, Polish history, Polish heritage, you know. Many Jews were doctors of Polish kings, yes, and they always supported, respected them. Yes, it's a really huge part of our our common heritage. Yeah, and even in nowadays, you can feel that, yeah, because you can feel, the climate of the Jewish festivals, but also the Christmas time. Yes, so important for Christianity, for Christmas. Yes, I think. Yeah.
Krakow Fact File. Krakow is served by John Paul II International Airport, Krakow-Belice. There are direct flights to Krakow from Tel Aviv with El Al subsidiary Sundor. You can fly into the city from Dubai and Abu Dhabi and many cities across Europe, including Amsterdam, Paris and Frankfurt, and numerous cities in the UK. It's a 30-minute taxi ride from the airport to the Old Town and 15 minutes longer by public transport. There are buses and a train service to the tourist areas of the city. We stayed in the comfortable and superbly located Hotel Saski Krakow, part of the Curio Collection by Hilton. As you would expect from such a popular destination, there are many hotels to choose from, among them the Hotel H15 Luxury Palace and the Wyndham Grand Krakow Old Town. In Kazimierz, the Jewish quarter, there are many apartment rentals. The Holiday Inn offers kosher food. $1 will buy you 3.93 Polish zloty as of the end of 2023. The climate of Krakow is moderately continental, characterised by cold winters with temperatures often below freezing and pleasantly warm summers. Perhaps the best time to visit Krakow is from mid-May to mid-September, since it's the warmest and sunniest period of the year. It can be hot in July and August, while in other circumstances nights can be cool or slightly cold even in these months, so it can be useful to bring a sweatshirt or sweater and a light jacket for the evening. There's an incredible variety of dining options in the city, with an abundance of traditional Polish food and Italian cuisine. For fancy local delicacies, try Copernicus or the somewhat cheaper Hevra. And Boccanera is a great bet for Italian food. Fiorentina will set you back a few zloty, but it's an experience. There are lots of vegan and vegetarian restaurants in town. As for kosher, well, first of all, remember that most of the Jewish-style eateries in the Kazimierz district are not kosher, but do pop into Cheder for a coffee. There's a kosher store in the Chabad house, and Falafel Shalanu in the Jewish district offers a mix of dairy meals.
This is Mark Gordon from the Jerusalem Post Podcast Travel Edition. Find us on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter at MarkDavidPod, or mail us at markdavidpod@gmail.com.
We're in one of the strangest offices of a CEO I think I've ever been in, Mark.
I love it.
You're the description man.
I've just suddenly spotted a bobblehead up there, I think. Is that a New York Yankees bobblehead?
Something of that nature.
So clearly there's somebody American in here.
Okay.
There are God knows how many old televisions papered around the building. There's some fabulous leather chairs. It's just really colourful.
There's also a Darth Vader mask.
Bottles of beer.
It's eclectic. So let's talk to the man who has put all of this together. But it's not the only thing that he's put together. Please meet Jonathan Ornstein, who is the CEO of the Jewish Community Centre in Krakow.
How do you end up as an American as the CEO of the JCC in Krakow?
Could be a whole new movie instead of An American in Paris.
Yes, An American in Krakow.
Well, New Yorker, first of all. But I was living in Israel, where I had made Aliyah and was a lone soldier. And I was living back on Kibbutz Yot Vatah after the army. And I met a Polish woman and fell in love. And sight unseen, I came to Poland in 2001. It didn't work out with her. And I just liked Krakow, so I decided to stay. And in 2008 they were building the JCC, and I was literally the only one in the country who knew what the letters JCC stood for, and evidently that was enough to get me the job.
How's your Polish?
For an American, it's unbelievably excellent. For the rest of the world, my Polish is pretty good.
What do you do here at the JCC?
We are dedicated to rebuilding Jewish life in Krakow. Our community was greatly decimated. Over 90% of Polish Jewry, over 90% of Krakow's Jews were murdered in the Holocaust. And then the survivors were either left or pushed out of the country or driven underground. And in the last 33 years since communism ended, we have a couple fascinating things going on. One is the deep fascination with everything Jewish among a large segment of Polish non-Jewish society, which has created an atmosphere that enables the second cool thing happening, which is young Poles are finding out that they have Jewish roots, and we're reaching out to them and trying to bring them back into the fold.
Our tour guide, Yola, has been taking us around the Jewish district, or the former Jewish district, and we've seen 7 reconstructed synagogues and
renovated synagogues, not reconstructed. Warsaw would have been reconstructed. In Krakow, they were all left in very good shape.
We've seen, in addition, lots of restaurants with Jewish names, Aviv and Hamsa, and even though that's Arabic. But how much is that Jewish Krakow? It's right across the road pretty much from where you are.
We jokingly call it Jurassic Park, which especially because that whole revitalization of the Jewish Quarter, the best preserved Jewish Quarter anywhere in Europe, started after Steven Spielberg came here in 1993 to film Schindler's List. So the whole Spielberg connection makes that, I think, relevant. It's important because most places in Europe, calling something Jewish or calling your restaurant Jewish is not something that you're going to do to attract business. But here, because of the history, because of how Jewish this quarter was and how well preserved it is, it makes sense for these restaurant owners, generally who aren't Jewish, to focus on the Jewish history by having these sort of Jewish-ish restaurants. No matter how you look at those restaurants, and we joke sometimes that it's kosher-style pork, although it's not really that bad, the non-Jews have helped create an environment here which is a big focus on everything Jewish, which then helps these young people who are finding out that they have Jewish roots. It makes them, I think, more likely to take those steps into an institution like ours. So I think that this whole focus in the Jewish Quarter, and we call it the Jewish Quarter, not the former Jewish Quarter, the whole focus in Kazimierz, this Jewish Quarter, on everything Jewish is something that I think is very positive for our community.
Coming into the JCC, there are 3 flags outside: the Polish flag, the Israeli flag, and the Ukrainian flag. How central are each of the countries to life in the JCC?
Very central at this point. We are a Polish institution, so a Polish flag is up. We, for the last almost 2 years, have been incredibly focused on helping Ukraine. We've helped so far 250,000 Ukrainian refugees, 98% of whom are not Jewish. There's a food pantry that's been open every single day since the second day of the war. That means 7 days a week: Shabbat, Yom Kippur, Christmas Day, New Year's Day. So the Ukrainian element of what we do is very important, this very Tikkun Olam focused. And since October 7th, we are doing all we can to support Israel, to support Israelis, displaced Israelis that are in Krakow, and there are many of them. That's why there's an Israeli flag on our building. There's a giant Bring Them Home banner on our building, and there's hostage posters up all over our building as well.
You've got hostage posters at the front of the building. In other cities around the world, people have been taking them down. Does it feel safe to be Jewish or Israeli in Krakow?
Nobody has taken our posters down. It feels to me, I've been living here as a Jew in Krakow, living here in Krakow always as a Jew wherever I live, but living here Jewish in Krakow for 23 years, and I feel like it's a very safe place. There are really, of course, there's anti-Semitism here as there is, I guess, everywhere, but it doesn't manifest itself as a threat to our community. We feel very good here. Jews and non-Jews are in this institution not only working, but you have over 70 non-Jewish volunteers here at our JCC who are young Poles who feel the country lost something when its Jewish population was mostly murdered, and now they have an opportunity not only to learn about this mysterious, fascinating people, the Jews that have lived in Poland for 1,000 years, but actually work hand in hand with this reborn, revitalized Jewish community and help us rebuild Jewish life.
There are 815 members of this JCC. There are so many activities. For example, as we keep saying, we're in the middle of Hanukkah as we're recording this, and tomorrow evening there is a donut and latke making session with a member of staff who is also a chef and very happy to teach people those skills. You also told us that 100,000 non-members come through here every year. We're a travel podcast, so I guess to some extent we're interested in those people. Who are they? Where are they coming from? And can anybody come in here?
Krakow is one of the most visited cities in Europe. It's a beautiful, historic, medieval city with a massive university presence, so it all the vibe of a big college town. So it's getting a lot of visitors, and more, certainly Americans and American Jews are coming to Poland. And historically, they would come here to learn about the lost, to go to Auschwitz, to go to the camps, maybe to go to the Schindler factory. And now they realize that there is a reborn Jewish community here, and it's important when Jewish life is growing to somehow connect to that. So, we say that it used to be Auschwitz period, and now it's Auschwitz, comma. And when those more than 100, I think before the last year before COVID, 2019, I think it was almost 140,000 visitors that came in. They're not really coming in necessarily to see something, there are always rotating exhibitions, but they're coming in here, and many of them are Jewish, to connect to this reborn Jewish community that they had no idea was here, and that people more and more understand that when there's Jewish life blooming, that you have a responsibility to see to it, to connect it, and by doing so, you're helping to nurture it.
On the door coming in, there's a sign that mentions the Prince of Wales, who is now King Charles. How is he involved with the JCC?
We're very proud of our royal connection. King Charles actually conceived of and founded our center. He was in Krakow in 2002 on a state visit, and as part of his visit, he met with some Holocaust survivors. Now, we still have about 50 Holocaust survivors that we're caring for here at the JCC, but he met with a few of these Holocaust survivors 20 years ago, and he was moved by their history, and he asked them how he could help them. And they said, we have all these beautiful synagogues, but we don't have a place to be together. And he promised to help them realize their dream of a Jewish senior citizens' home in Krakow. He went back to the UK, got involved with an organization called World Jewish Relief. They did a bit of research and realized that it wasn't only this survivor population trailing off, that young Poles were starting to find out about their Jewish identity. So they went back to the then prince saying, we'd love to do a project. What if we do something even bigger than a senior center like a JCC? And in his eminent wisdom, he said yes, and he gave some of his personal funds to help build the center. And World Jewish Relief raised the money in the UK, and in April 2008, then the Prince of Wales and the Duchess of Cornwall came to Krakow and spent the day with us and opened our JCC. He subsequently became the patron of World Jewish Relief. I've met with him afterwards in London and briefed him about our work that we're doing. He's very proud of our work with Ukraine. He's let us know that he really believes that we're doing a tremendous job, and he's happy to still be involved.
Perhaps most Jewish people, perhaps most Israelis who come to Poland tend to be looking at the past, at the history. What about the future? Where are we going? What's going to be here?
People come to Poland saying Kaddish, and they leave saying Shehechianu.
How do people find out about the JCC in Krakow and what's going on?
People can find out by listening to wonderful podcasts on the Jerusalem Post. They can also go to our website, friendsofjcckrakow.org or jcckrakow.org. We're incredibly active on social media, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, wherever you like.
And there are 501c3.
Jonathan Ornstein, CEO of the Krakow JCC, thank you very much.
It was my pleasure. Thank you.
Cheers, Mark.
Cheers, David.
What are you on?
Oh, about my fifth or sixth.
It is good to relax,
Yes.
and to have fine food, and in this case, a rather fine, locally produced vodka. This particular one is black
Currant.
currant, and there are raspberry.
I've had the
and-
pine.
How was it?
Very lovely, very smooth.
So all of these were recommended to us by our next guest. Could you introduce yourself and tell us where we are.
Hello, my name is Isabella. I'm a manager of Hevre in Krakow.
So the name Hevra, for some Jewish people or Israelis listening, they might be familiar. What is Hevra?
The building, it was the Jewish house of prayer, Hevra Tehilim, but the Hevre means colleagues, friends. Yeah.
It's an extraordinary building, really beautiful high ceilings. It's very well lit, and as you look around, there are frescoes all over the wall with Hebrew writing. You can see that over time they faded, but these are the original frescoes. Tell us a little bit about the history of this building and how it became Hevra.
The building was built in 1896, and then it was a Jewish house of prayer. After that, for 50 years, it was a dancing school ensemble called Krakowiacy. And as you can see, the floor is from 50s and 60s. You can feel the spirit of this building. It's something very, very unique. Actually, now Hevre is a more cultural house, traditional in mind and modern in spirit, actually. So it's a very special place in Kazimierz district.
Do you feel a big responsibility looking after such a historic building and trying to integrate it into the modern community?
Yes, I can feel it, and I really want to make it good and proper and with respect of the history of the building and respect with the local people here also. And I really love this building. I love the atmosphere here, and I feel really, really like at home.
Talk to us a little bit about how it's used. You've hinted at it, talking about the art, the culture, but give us some more specifics.
We are organizing a lot of events here, upstairs and downstairs. There are 2 rooms, which one we are using for art, fashion, meetups, conferences, and also the festivals. We are a part of a lot of festivals in Krakow, so Hevre become a house for local festivals, for local events also. We've got the restaurant, but there's 2 rooms more that we are actually doing our events.
There are some acknowledgements of the history of the building, some Polish food, some Jewish wines. Can you tell us something about them?
We try to make it more local. We are serving breakfasts here. For example, we have free-range eggs. We try to support the local farmers. Our main card, it's more international actually. We've got some Jewish food also, but we've got also some boards that you can actually share with some pastas, with cheese, and with, for example, vegan cheese also. So there are some things that you can also share and try different kind of food.
As Marcus said, you're in a historic building, you're in a historic area. This area is also the home to many people. How do you integrate? How do you say to your neighbours, we want to be part of this community? If we're going to have music, we don't want to scare you away with loud noise and so on. How do you find that blend in this residential area?
Actually, I talk with people every day, you know, when I meet them on the street, I just talk with them and I ask about how they feel. Is everything was okay? Did they heard some music or do they need something? We support our neighbors. We do a lot of things, you know, to help them. And we try to organize some events and we invite them also. For example, for some concerts, we give them some tickets, for example, for some events that, I don't know, cinemas or things that we are actually organizing here. And we try to be a part of the community because the community in Kazimierz is huge and lots of people, they live here still, and we want them to be here. We want to have those small shops, they are still here. We still want them. We don't want to lose them. So we support them also.
If I'm visiting Krakow, how do I find out what's going on at Hevre and what's on the menu?
You can check our Instagram or our Facebook also, and we are organizing a lot of events.
The name of the place is Hevre, Hevre. Isabella, thank you so much indeed for the interview and for your hospitality.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
שכן חבס שכן חבס קאבולאי צורים שכן חבס קולאי צורים לפונך אדוני ישם אלוהינו
Mark, I think at the start of this podcast that we began recording yesterday morning or 2 days ago, whenever it was, we talked about the difficulty of putting out a podcast right now with so much bad news, tragic stuff, and also good news coming out of Israel. And it was really important for us when we came to Krakow to talk about the Jewish community outside of Israel, how it's feeling right now. We had a long conversation with Jonathan at the Jewish Community Centre, which we didn't include in the recording, about the feelings right now of the locals, both Jewish and non-Jewish, about everything that is happening as we record back in Israel in terms of the war and the loss. And there is this total sympathy, understanding and support from everybody that we've met in our couple of days here for the Israeli position and everything that Israel is fighting for, and the understanding that what Israel is fighting for is also to defend a country like Poland.
These, as David said, are very difficult times, but we wanted to bring you some stories of hope. And coming to Poland, which the Israeli government now rates as one of the safest countries to coming to hear the story of a community starting to be reborn, starting to see Hanukkahs in the street, meeting people who are running Jewish cultural festivals, Jewish community centres, general community centres in Jewish buildings, old synagogues that have been brought back to life 50, 60, 70 years after they were last Jewish institutions. This, for me, has given me something to look forward to. It's made this trip worthwhile.
Just completely anecdotally, we posted some Hanukkah photographs to our social media at Mark David Pod, and one of the people commented and said, before I heard about your visit, I never had thought about going to Poland other than going to Holocaust sites. But now I understand that there is something special here, a growth of Jewish community, working together, both the Krakow municipality, the Jewish Community Centre and so on, that maybe I would consider coming here not just to see those sites, but also to spend a good few days in the Małopolska region.
We're not saying we're going to forget. We've certainly discussed it openly and very wholly with our guests over the last few days that we've been in Krakow. But we also wanted to show that Krakow as a city has changed. The attitude of people here is very different to one would imagine, and there is a community here, bigger than people think, more active than people think, and very proud of who they are and very much open to who they are.
So on that note, we should say a very big thank you to those people who had that conversation with us, some of whom you've heard, and the ones you did hear were Yola and Isabella.
And Janusz and Jonathan.
On behalf of them and ourselves, we thank you for listening. Please do subscribe. Tell everybody about the podcast. Share it with them. Give us a 5-star rating. Write comments. Ask us questions via our email, markdavidpod@gmail.com.
And for everybody out there, keep safe, keep smiling, and keep the faith.
And may 2024 bring everybody listening to this and to all of your families and your friends a healthy, happy, and wonderful year.